Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast, the show for women who are seeking more fulfillment in life and simply not getting it from their current situation. We focus specifically on careers, but hey, we spend a lot of time in our careers, so making changes here will definitely create an impact in your overall happiness. I'm your host, Simone Morris, and my mission is to empower women to succeed. I believe that in order to powerfully own your career, you must decide and claim that you want to sit in the driver's seat. You must know that you deserve better and be willing to not only do the requisite work, but be willing to go out on a limb to ensure your success. Each episode focuses on profiling a leader who is clearly demonstrating ownership of their career. Join me and my guests as we explore career journeys and bring you actionable strategies to use to get into the driver's seat for your career. Because ultimately, your career is your responsibility. Let's get into the show. Hey everybody, it's Simone Morris, host of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I am super duper excited to have my good friend, the one and only Ingrid Arredondo, as a guest for this episode of the podcast. Ingrid, welcome to the show.
Hi Simone, thank you so much for having me.
Awesome, I'm excited. Tell our listeners who you are and what you're currently doing.
Sure. My name is Ingrid Arredondo, and I am a nutritional therapy practitioner. I have a practice that works with adults and children, and a lot of times it's families. And primarily I work with them for their learning, mood, and behavior issues, though I work with a variety of different health concerns that they have.
Awesome. Well, I should mention to our listeners that you and I have known each other for what seems like decades and have been on a career journey. And so I fully believe that you're in the driver's seat for your career, having been an observer. And so tell us some highlights from your career journey.
That's kind. Believe it or not, it all started out when I was in my teens and I had wanted to be a lawyer, but that was not really the path for me. I felt like that was not something I wanted to do, although I think it's a wonderful career path for others. So that's actually where I met Simone. We were both corporate computer trainers together right out of college for me. And that was a wonderful experience for speaking in public and just learning how to help people and figuring things out. So most of the time I can figure things out on the computer now. I moved on from there and I worked for one of the top 5 consulting firms in the country in project management. And that was an excellent experience for me, just really learning how to get it done and working really hard and being very dedicated to a project that I was working on. And then from there, totally different culture, moved on to working in the corporate office of one of the top iconic American retail brands. It was much more casual, super fun. Not that the other place was not great in its way, but this was just really more me. And it was wonderful because I was working with a lot of merchandisers and buyers and really helping to translate what they needed to some of the more technical folks. From there, I moved on to working on implementing a huge enterprise resource planning system for them. And that was wonderful to get into something that was a huge project. Loved that. That's when I really knew that I wanted to be working with things that were project related at the time. So then I moved on to another company. It was actually the largest premium beverage company in the world. It was wonderful. That's another place that Simone and I worked together. So it's nice that Simone and I have had a lot of these repeat performances in our life and a lot of parallels, which is great. Moved to London for a global director position, and it was amazing. It really was such a great experience. So much I loved about it. However, after a while, I noticed that something was kind of missing. Not that I didn't love contributing to this company, but I wanted something more meaningful and fulfilling in my life. So I decided to make a change. So what I did, I had no idea what I wanted to do. There were a lot of things that I loved. It was a little scary to figure out making a change. So I actually did this exercise called My Ideal, and I'm putting air quotes up there. And you can actually do this exercise for anything. You can just kind of free write on everything that you want to have included in your career. So I just wrote out like 35 different things I love to do. I didn't think about it. It could be anything and just super fast. You have to put a time limit on it. Then I decided like which ones I most likely would want to do and which one it was the likeliest I would do the work to get there. And based on that, I had my top 3. Number 1 was be a mom, because I was getting married and wanted to have children. And then after that, it was a nutritionist. I've long been fascinated by nutrition and alternative health. So that's the direction that I went to. And it's kind of, well, it is where I have kind of gone in the trajectory to get me here.
Just a quick question. So what was your undergraduate in when you started the career journey? What did you major in?
Bachelor Arts in English.
In English. And you're thinking, because I know you said that you didn't want to be a lawyer. What were you thinking you were going to do with that degree?
I still thought I was going to be a lawyer at that point. I don't think that my school had pre-law, but I felt as though the written language would help me and just communication would help me a lot with my English degree. And frankly, I was really passionate about it. It's what I really loved and it resonated with me. So I felt like that's something I wanted to do.
So was it immediate that you decided that you didn't want to still be a lawyer? So you went off on this different business journey?
No, as with everything, there's, experiences that occur. And I had done internships and I had clerked and, I had done internships in different law offices, family law, a variety of different ones. And I enjoyed it. But then I wanted to wait and see if it's what I really wanted to do. And so I started out as a paralegal and I realized it was so not for me. I needed something. It's very interesting and a lot of research, but I felt like it was not something that really was right for me. I wanted to work with maybe a younger group. I needed something that was really more of a project. I didn't realize this then. I couldn't put it in words at that point. But that's what kind of started it. And it really wasn't, I realized this really wasn't what I wanted.
It's so interesting to me because in my background, I started out wanting to be a buyer. And I have this degree in retail management that I do nothing with, and the journey sort of becomes your journey. Even though you go to college, you get the foundation, you come out and you can be on a totally different trajectory like you were talking about.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know that everything is kind of written in stone and everything is meant to be necessarily, but I do believe that we have a path and there's a reason why we do everything. And if there's not, for those who maybe don't believe that, at least you're learning from every single experience and it builds upon where you are right now.
Absolutely. So for you, what was the defining moment that signified to you that you were in the driver's seat for your career?
I think, I know that it was really when I was very confident in what I was doing. It was a big change for me to move from being a global director. You have a lot of structure. You have a lot of, it sounds like a very exciting career and a lot of interest in it. And it was. So it was a big difference for me going from that to owning my own business and being in charge of everything and maybe it not being such like a flashy kind of role as my previous role had been, my corporate job. So when I was really passionate about it, so that's one thing, but I think, and that's great, that kind of gets you motivated. But when I knew that things were really going to be in the driver's seat for me, is I stopped procrastinating on things and being afraid of following through with things. So, and I'll give it an example of something else in more detail later, but there was something going on with my website and my website developer just disappeared. I couldn't make any changes to it. And I was so terrified of that because I was not in control. I didn't have ownership of it and I couldn't face the fact that I couldn't make changes on my own. So I was afraid to deal with it. So basically, I tried to figure out a plan. Anytime that there's fear, and that's when I think the main thing is when you're not in the driver's seat, when you're experiencing fear and not looking at things like that they'll work out and that they're meant to be. So for whatever reason, I was meant to go through that whole thing with the website, figured out my plan, figured out my steps. I took a mini course on WordPress, realized a quarter of the way through, I'm like, there is no way I want to do all of this. And I am terrified of having just enough knowledge to get in trouble with it. So I knew I had to get another web developer. So that was another phase. But also, I never wanted to be left in the lurch again and not be in control of my own website, of my own career in that way. So I knew that even though I would have a website developer, I needed to have the basics so that I could make some of the changes on my own. I could remove that person from the website if I wanted to. And so there's a couple other things involved in it, but it's amazing when you have the focus on it and you know that that's the plan and what you want to do, all of a sudden things start happening. So then I confided in a friend who was a colleague, and I was vulnerable and allowed myself to be vulnerable and shared with her what was going on because I was really embarrassed. Because I'm a very organized and business-like woman, but sometimes things happen and it throws you a curveball and you're a little embarrassed of what's been going on. You're like, oh my God, how did that happen? And then she's like, I have the person for you. Like, I'm looking for a web developer. Has to be somebody inexpensive, this, that, trustworthy. I have someone for you. And she, right then and there, called the guy's wife, got his number, called with me on speakerphone and talked to him. I was like, okay, send Ingrid an email, and just made sure that we were compatible. And then that was that. So once I got over the fear of addressing something, put a plan together and reached out to somebody, confided in them, and allowed myself to be vulnerable, then that's when things happened. And that's when I knew I was in the driver's seat.
Awesome. I love that. And there are so many parallels that I can think about for that. I mean, it could be you don't like your job or, and you finally decide I'm in control. My career is my responsibility. And you come up with a plan and you follow the plan and you get the right support that you need to be successful, and you stay intentional and in action. I love it. Love that so much. So what would you say, Ingrid, is the formula for successfully owning your career?
Well, my formula is kind of what I mentioned, is to make a plan. And it's especially if you have fear around it, the best thing to do is to shine a light on it, because nothing is scarier than what's hidden in the dark, and you don't know what you don't know. So just kind of getting up the courage and the trust and the faith in yourself, and that things will work out for you. Shine a light on it, see what's going on, and then put a plan together. So having trust and faith in your plan once you do get it together. Huge is having a solid support team to ask advice and to collaborate with. So, I have people in my life that I work with consistently on a professional and just a personal basis. So I have my colleagues in the nutrition area. I have friends and people who are experts like you, Simone. So thank you so much for all of your support. My husband, my family, my accountant, my lawyer, other advisors. So it's just so important to have that support structure around so that you can reach out and get help so you're not left in a lurch. And I think, another thing is do what you say you're going to do. And that means do what you're going to do, what you say you'll do for others as well as for yourself.
I love that you said that. And I was just thinking about that for 2020. I really want to do what I say I'm going to do, especially for myself, because I think sometimes that can get lost. And I love what you said about having the right support, because I call it Success Squad. But yeah, those are the key people that you need to keep your business going. And if you have a career, most people have a career, there are key people that you need on your team as well.
Without a doubt.
So how have you handled risk in your career?
Well, I usually find that if I don't take, I actually do move towards risk in many different ways. I feel as though risk, you really have to have faith in the universe or in God, or however you want to look at it. Everybody's different. But for me, I just kind of have faith that things will work out. Like there's an example when I got my job, I was offered the job to move to London, and everybody thought I was crazy. It's like, oh my gosh, don't move to London. My parents didn't want me to move. And I just felt like I had to. And it's like, if I didn't take that risk, my career wouldn't have moved forward the way it had. I wouldn't have met all the amazing friends that I met over there, the experiences, the travel. And so sometimes just, not even looking down. That's kind of one of my other quotes, don't look down. I've had a time in my life several years ago where there was something very scary that I was going through. And I just told myself, don't look down. Don't look down. I just looked ahead, and I couldn't allow myself to even acknowledge that there would be failure. So that was very helpful to just have that in my head. And I always love the quote, leap and you'll find a net. Just again, when there's something so terrifying or could be potentially terrifying, you just can't always think it through. Obviously, you want to do look at certain risks, and is this really, a sensible thing to do? But follow your heart and your own internal intuition on if this is the right thing to do. And I guess if another thing that I sometimes, if I do feel a little nervous about taking a risk, I just kind of put something out there, and I just say, I wish for the highest good for all. Please, and please guide me to make the right choice. And if I always say I want the highest good for all, not just for myself, I feel like things work out. And I just have faith in that, because that really has worked out for me so many times, especially when I don't feel like I have control over something. And I just say that, and I kind of release it, and then I can just kind of go forward and do my thing.
Yeah. So is that a consistent messaging or affirmation that you're telling yourself so you don't forget it, and you're able to move forward despite the fear?
When I need to, that's what I do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's something I learned from, I'm sure you've heard of, the listeners have heard, some of them have heard of Gabrielle Bernstein. Some people love her. Maybe she's not everybody's cup of tea, but I love her book, The Universe Has Your Back. And when I'm going through something that's kind of like a lot of risk going on, or there's some fear around it, I listen to it, her audiobook of that book in my car. And for some reason, whenever there's something specific going on in my world, when I press play, it specifically addresses whatever is going on at that time. And so she has a lot of different affirmations in that audiobook, and that's one of them that I took from her book.
Awesome. What advice would you give to someone wanting to successfully own their career?
Without a doubt, the number one thing is that you have to love and be passionate about what you do. Because if you're not excited about doing it, because you're working on it every day, your customer and clients are going to feel that. So if you feel like it's a slog and you don't want to complete your work or show up for your tasks 100%, it's going to be felt by others. You're going to feel it. You're not going to be humming along with it. You're not going to want to do things. And then a really big thing, if you're not passionate about certain things, just outsource it. So for example, part of my website, I'm outsourcing it because I don't want to do it. I want to do some of it. I just don't want to do like the really scary technical kind of parts. I really would also say putting together a plan. Coming from a project management background, I can't help but have a plan and a timeline on what I'll do and when I'll do it. It's funny because years ago in my corporate career, I had a reputation. It wasn't a bad one, but one for getting people to do things whether they liked it or not, but in a nice way. And I don't mean like I was not kind to people. I just always had a plan. People would say, I'm going to do this. I'm like, oh, okay. What's a date you feel comfortable doing that by? I would put it down. It was part of the plan. I could always circle back to people and say, oh, how's that going? I remember you'd committed to this date to do this. And it just kept them on point. And it keeps me on point as well.
I can so relate as a fellow project manager. I think in terms of plans, I'm always, even sometimes I'll use the language of stakeholder management or risk mitigation strategy. I'm immersed in it, and I find from moving forward, having a plan really helps you to move forward with your goals.
For sure. And it actually also helps you kind of, figure things out, like what you want to do. Like you could say, oh, I want to have a nutrition business. So what about that? Like, what do you need to do? What are the steps? And also like with the website, when I wanted to get in control of that, I had my plan together on what I needed to do and figure out the elements of that.
Awesome. Well, can you think or share with us any resources that you have found to be helpful in navigating your career?
So many. One resource that is the first one is my personal experience. So just finding a need in the community for what I do, somebody who offers like a natural, non-medication approach to help specifically with learning mood and behavior. So experience is so important, and learning from others, just seeing what their experiences are. So learning, like resources can be my clients, it can be courses that I'm taking. One really great resource was that my ideal exercise I told you that I do. I even found our house using that, and an apartment using the ideal exercise. I love Marie Forleo B School. That was really helpful for my career. So I worked with some stuff on that. I meditate not every single day, but almost every single day. And before, thinking meditation is something super difficult, please know that I like guided meditations. I love the Oprah, Deepak Chopra meditation. So they have a meditation that seems for every single thing. It can be like relationships. I want to have more health in my life, whatever. They have different 21-day meditations, and a lot of times they do offer them for free. Gabrielle Bernstein, without a doubt, love her. A lot of the different, as I mentioned before, like classes and books, and just a lot of these different alternative health and nutrition resources that are not really in the mainstream. And most of all, my support team and my quote unquote like steering committee. So my husband, my family, my trusted friends, my colleagues, advisor, lawyer, my accountant, Simone Morris, and thank you for her advice and encouragement, which has been so valuable. So truly, you've given me some great advice, and it's been greatly appreciated and very helpful. And my clients, I teach them a lot, but I also learn so much for them. I mentioned that before, and I'm constantly learning. And there's so many more, but those are the top ones I can think of right now.
Those are amazing, Ingrid. I want to go back to the first thing that you said, because I think some of us have a hard time honing in on what that niche is, or what our true passion. And so what advice would you give around really honing in on that need that you're filling?
Do you mean me personally, or what I'd advise for others?
For others.
It has to be something that resonates with you. And sometimes you just kind of fall into something, like maybe somebody will offer you something and you see how it feels. But my recommendation is it has to be something that really interests you, that you feel passionate about. And maybe it's something that has been a negative impact on your life and a really big challenge. And that's something that could motivate you. Maybe it's something that happened to a member of your family, or anything. And just something that really makes you feel something in yourself, that makes you want to do something to make a difference with that area, or you just have a great time doing something. Going back to what I mentioned earlier, if you're not loving and being passionate about what you do or interested, it's going to come through.
Absolutely. I would love for you to tell our audience about adrenal fatigue, because it relates to having a successful career. As you try to think about what your priorities are, and health sometimes moves to the bottom of the list. And since this is your area of expertise, I remember you telling me about adrenal fatigue, and I was like, what's that? And I think it's important to share some of that knowledge on this podcast.
I'd be happy to. And it's funny, we went through the whole thing and I never mentioned that that's something that's really important for a formula of success. It has to be health. If you don't have your health and energy, then it's very difficult to be motivated and excited and passionate about anything. So adrenal fatigue is way more common than I think people realize. And if you've ever had the feeling that you're just exhausted, you're not interested in things, maybe you're clenching and grinding teeth, you just kind of feel tight and you're stressing out. Maybe it's having kind of panic attacks or being stressed in social situations, just feeling insecure and worried. Any of those can be, an adrenal fatigue situation. It can also just be impacting someone's health. If you don't have strong adrenals, it's much easier to get colds. It's harder to fight them off. So usually I've seen this in people with a really high intensity job, moms who do a ton. It can also be in children and teens who just, have a really high sugar diet, high processed food diet. So it can come from an external stressor. So a stressful thing at work, a family member dying or someone close to you, moving, divorce, even happy events. But it can also be an internal stressor. Some of those stressors can be, again, your diet. Are you giving your body the right nutritional therapy? Is it getting what it needs as far as cofactors to help to your body to accomplish different functions? Are you energizing your brain so it can think? And other stressors that actually can impact the adrenals are everything from toxic chemicals, heavy metals, if you have mercury amalgams, or from various things in a house or in your work. It depends. Some stressors, and people don't really like talking about this, but parasites are a normal thing, but sometimes people, if they have an inappropriate diet for their body, too many processed foods, you can get kind of an overgrowth of parasites, and that can really wear your body down. A huge one I want to mention is genetically modified foods. That is one of the top things I can say that can really drag you down. And I know I do want to mention, as I mentioned, the different stressors, like things that you put in your body or that affect your body. But a huge part is, the things at work. Are you loving what you're doing? Are you surrounding yourself with people who support you? Are you in a solid relationship? Do you have a lot of energy vampires in your life? So those are some of the things that can cause adrenal fatigue.
Thank you for explaining that. And so what do people do about that? It just very succinctly. I know that's like a whole day or something like that, but what can they do? What's one thing they can do?
Okay. There's so much. So on the personal level and with work level, I'd say have boundaries. So learn how to say no, really observe people, observe how they make you feel. If you really just kind of sit still and focus on something, you can see if somebody is treating you in a positive way or a negative way, and just change the way that you're allowing them to speak with you in a kind way. And just sometimes you have to cut certain people out of your life. It may not be so easy, but slowly kind of move away from that type of person. Say no at work, or try to kind of renegotiate what you're working on in a way that's a good thing for your career as well. From the food perspective, number one, and sorry, I know you said just say one thing.
No, go ahead. We want to hear this good stuff. Go ahead.
So if I said do one thing with your diet, I would say cut out processed foods, especially GMOs, and really try to only eat things that are organic. Try to eat pasture raised meats, organic pastured eggs. it's something that you hardly will even notice when you're just doing swap outs. And by taking out flour, I know everyone's like on the whole gluten thing, and I'm totally on board with that too. But no one wants to have their bread taken away. But it will really help if you do reduce grains significantly and reduce sugars, and especially coffee. I know I think about coffee almost every day, but it really does whack your adrenals.
That's a lot of good information, Ingrid. Please, I love it. No, I feel like the listeners are going to get value from it. Tell our listeners how they can connect with you and learn more.
I can be reached on my website at fulllifenutrition.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you'd like to email me directly instead of via the contact page, it's Ingrid@fulllifenutrition.com.
Thank you. And Ingrid, everybody, Ingrid is leaving us with some goodies. Tell us what goodies you're leaving our audience with.
Anybody who reaches out will get a free 15-minute discovery call. And that's just to find out if this is an approach that you'd be interested for yourself or for your child. And then the other one is a complete and confidential nutritional assessment questionnaire. It's pretty lengthy, but it's amazing at identifying your overall symptom burden for all of your major organ systems. So it's going to show how is your upper gastrointestinal system, how is your small intestine, your large intestine, your liver gallbladder, your blood sugar regulation, your adrenals, your thyroid, female reproductive system, or male reproductive system, cardiovascular, your immune system, your kidneys. So all of that, and your vitamins and minerals, of course, all of that is going to be listed in a report. It will show you in a bar graph, as well as what your highest level of symptom burden is and what kind of nutrients you need in order to rectify that. And you're just able to see that all in black and white on a report.
Wonderful. That is super generous of you, Ingrid. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Power of Owning Your Career podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. It is my hope that you enjoyed today's episode. You can check out the show notes for this episode on the SimoneMorrisEnterprises.org website by clicking the podcast menu. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and tell a friend or two about it.